Have you ever been told you are too much, too talkative, too quiet, too outspoken? If you have, what if the thing you've been criticized for most of your life is actually your hidden leadership superpower? In today's episode of the Unleash Your Ambition podcast, Ashley Coxx shares how being told she talked too much as a child became the very skill that helped her lead high performance teams. We have a conversation about how finding your authentic voice can create a ripple effect that gives others permission to speak up too. We also talk about why intentional communication is far more powerful than just filling the air with words. And we also talk about how Ashely stood up to a toxic boss who tried to silence her. So if you've ever felt like you do not fit the mold, then our conversation will show you how to turn your unique traits into your ultimate leadership edge. All right, grab your pen, your paper, and your favorite drink and get the most out of this episode. Hello, Ashley. Thank you so much for being on the Unleash Your Ambition podcast. Can you share who you are, what you do, and how you help people?
Hey, Stacie, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you. So, a little bit about me. I am a leadership mentor for women who have a team but no time. And I really help women find their voice so that they can step more fully into their leadership role. And I've found over the years that that has been a common theme in my life. And so, I love being able to help other women, really discover who they are as a leader and be able to lead in a way that feels really authentic and genuine to them so that they don't have to sacrifice their humanity in order to leave a high performance team.
Whew, amen to that. Yes. Oh my goodness. So that actually ties into exactly why I wanted you on the podcast, because I want to talk about how your most criticized trait became your leadership superpower. So, first question off, how can you describe the difference between simply talking a lot and leveraging talkativeness as a leadership superpower?
Yeah. So, kind of going way back, I was told I talked too much as a child by every teacher that I ever had all throughout school. And
Mm.
I clearly remember thinking about how I felt shut down, how I had something to say and it wasn't welcome in those spaces. And sometimes that led to disciplinary action, like me sitting right by the teacher's desk, which honestly, I'd still turn around and talk to the people behind me. But, it was interesting because I remember in ninth grade, I actually had a teacher who put it more pleasantly than other teachers had and was like, Ashely is a really gregarious and outgoing personality, and it's going to serve her well in many different ways. However, it's not always suitable for the classroom. And I think that was a really pivotal moment for me when I realized, like, okay, all talking isn't good talking. So let me start to figure out what makes sense. And so when we're talking just to hear ourselves talk, or we're just kind of rambling on, or we don't have a direction that we're going, that can be ineffective. And a lot of times I see leaders talking at their teams, and they're not engaging in effective communication and conversation because talking is a two-way street. We can't just be talking nonstop. And like my mom always said, God gave you two ears and one mouth to talk, half as much as you listen. Okay. But when we're thinking about effective communication and effectively leveraging our talking skills, we need to come into it with a strategy, with a plan, with a thoughtfulness and an intention behind it. And I think that's the main difference between the two is the intention and the impact of what we're saying.
Mm. Yes, yes, I couldn't agree with you more. Wonderful. So you mentioned that you had the light bulb moment when you realized that there's a difference between talking too much and actually strategically or intentionally talking. Like, how did you go about like figuring that out? I mean, did it take a long time? Was there anything that you did that you do now, that
Mm.
you remember from your childhood?
Yeah, I think part of it is understanding the audience that you're, engaging with. And I started to understand, especially from kind of that point forward, that my talking was being disruptive and it wasn't adding value. And so maybe it wasn't a fully fleshed out, mature understanding like it is now, but I started to understand, well, I'm not really helping things along. I think I am. I have something to say, but every conversation doesn't require my input. And that was a big learning moment. And I think one that I continue to learn. There's still times today where my brain starts going in 57 different directions and I'm just like, "Da, da, 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 da," and I can feel the frenetic energy. And I'm like, okay, Ashley, calm down. Just calm down. Like, you don't have to say all this right now. And so, one of the strategies that I started using that's really served me well in my life is just writing down notes. If I have a thought, I don't have to necessarily say it out loud. I can just jot it down. And that's been really, really productive for me and helpful because number one, a lot of times I'm saying things out loud because I don't want to forget it, right? And then number two, if I do forget it, it might never come back again. And what if it
Yeah.
was a great idea? What if it was a valuable piece of information for this particular conversation or something down the line? So we want to make sure that we capture that so that way we don't lose those nuggets of gold and wisdom.
Yes, I love that. And it's something that you can do that it's simple, just
Mhm.
write
Mhm.
it down. If you have your phone, a mobile device, a tablet,
Mhm.
type it in. Like I have so many thoughts that I have to write down.
Yeah.
Otherwise I forget,
Mhm.
you know how we say, oh, we'll remember that later. It's like
Oh,
most
that's the
likely
biggest
not.
lie we ever told ourselves.
Right. It's like, that's probably not going to happen.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, for the people that are watching or listening, like that is just a simple way to get your thoughts out without speaking it. Just write it down because I know I have so many thoughts and it's
Mhm.
a lot of them are junk, but some of them are nuggets of gold, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. So thank you for bringing that in to light for the people who feel that they need to say everything out loud. It's like, no, you don't. There's a way you can organize this and go back to it later.
Yeah. And one
So
of the ways that you
yeah,
can come back to that conversation, I just kind of want to connect that dot a little bit
yeah.
further because sometimes we don't have the opportunity to say what we wanted to say in the meeting, the conversation, the situation that we're in. And so it's always a good practice to get into to just come to that person that you want to have or to share that idea with and say, hey, I had a couple of great ideas that I'd love to share with you. I know now's not the right time, but let me know when I can get on your calendar or when we can have a cup of coffee or have a conversation about this. Because you also have to take ownership of those ideas that you have so that they don't just get lost in the shuffle because everybody's busy. Nobody knows what's inside of your brain or on your notepad. And so we have to advocate for ourselves, for our ideas, and for our voices. And so it's important to connect the dot. Like, don't just jot it down and be like, well, that was a great idea one time, 6 months ago. But advocate for yourself and take that next step to schedule that time to have that sharing in the appropriate scenario.
Yeah, that's solid. That's a solid piece of advice right there for sure. That way it just doesn't collect dust somewhere, that idea,
Yeah.
or um, maybe something you wanted to communicate just doesn't go to the wayside because it
Yeah.
would be no better than just letting it stay up in your head. And you don't want that. Yeah,
No.
no. Okay, so I'm curious about like some lessons that you've learned, as a leader, and being able to use your superpower. What are like the biggest lessons that you've learned thus far?
Oh my gosh. So many.
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty
So
sure.
many lessons. I think one of the earliest lessons I learned in my leadership journey was when I was in my mid 20s. It was my first leadership role. I had an incredibly toxic boss, and I had to fight tooth and nail to advocate for myself.
Mm,
And I was, 23, 24, 25 years old when I worked for this particular individual. And there was one day that I was walking by the conference room. And he would every day around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon call all of the male department heads to the conference room and they would have coffee and just kind of shoot the breeze. And I was walking by one day working and taking care of customers. And we worked in a retail setting and it was very busy. And he hollered out the door. My maiden name is Mackie. Hey, Mackie, go get us some more coffee. And like my eyeballs got as big around as saucers, and I whipped my head around
Like
and I said,
mine
I
right now.
will, right? Like exactly. Like Stacey's eyeballs got real big for those of you that are listening to the audio. Um, and I had whipped around and I said, I will not be getting you any coffee. And maybe it was because it just was surprising in the moment. I didn't have time to really think about it. I didn't, that was not a strategic communication in any way, shape, or form, but it had taken me so off guard and I was so offended that he would say, go get us some more coffee. And yet I'm not invited to the coffee conversations. And so he didn't like that. And he ended up punishing me by taking away responsibilities, access to systems, keys. I essentially, at the end of the day, was going around dusting shelves, in this retail environment. And I thought to myself, I can either continue down this path and eventually, just quit and move on and do something else, or I can fight for myself. I can use my voice and I can use that talking too much as a superpower to say the right things. And so I contacted our regional manager and I said, I need to have a conversation with you. And this is what's going on. And I'm either giving my 2 weeks notice today, or you can find me another store to put me in because this ain't it. And I've was brazen. It was a very bold conversation to have as a 24-year-old young woman who's 5'2" and doesn't look imposing in any way, shape, or form, to go against all of these very seasoned older white men. And I said, I'm willing to put this job on the line and to walk away because I will not be treated like this. And that's the first really powerful example of when I used my voice to step into my leadership power and my potential. And I said, I promise you will not regret it if you give me a
Wow.
chance under other leadership. I went on to another store a couple of weeks later, and that store manager couldn't have been more complimentary, more grateful, boasting and bragging and going back to our regional manager and saying, I don't know where you've been hiding, Ashley, but she is amazing. And so I knew that fighting for my self-worth, fighting for who I knew I was and who I knew I could be was going to be one of the most pivotal moments of my life.
Ooh, what a powerful story there. And imagine if you did not speak up. I mean,
Mm,
you would have been miserable in a position where no one, they didn't respect you, you
yeah.
know. So I think the biggest lesson is that out of this is you fighting for yourself because no one else is going to do it.
Mm-mm.
No one else is
No.
going to do it. And
Yeah.
that is, that probably hits home for a lot of people that are, who are just accepting the circumstances and
Mm,
not speaking out for themselves, which leads me to the people who are leaders, but they're more introverted. Maybe they're afraid to use their voice and stand up for themselves. Like what would you have to say to those people? Because they're great at what they do,
mhm.
but they they don't talk a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what is so powerful about our introverted friends, which I am not an introvert, for those of you listening, you're probably like, yeah, I'm definitely not an introvert. But what I love about our introverted friends is that you are so thoughtful. You don't speak until you have something powerful to say. And so I think the biggest part of that is learning how to trust yourself, that when you talk, you're not just talking to be heard. You're talking to say something that matters. And part of what matters is you as a person, as a leader, as an individual on a team or within a volunteer organization or a religious organization or a group or wherever you are in your life, as a business owner, as somebody who, just gets involved in fun things just for the heck of it. Wherever you are in this world, your voice matters and what you have to contribute to this world matters. And so I think just focusing on knowing that when you talk, you have something to say and that that is important for you to share. And so part of that too is also knowing your own comfortability and your own limitations and knowing that there might not be um, a situation where maybe you're in a big group and you don't feel comfortable speaking up. That's okay. Pull the person aside that you need to have that conversation with and do it one on one. You don't always have to be in a large group and have that conversation. But if you're leading a team and you have to have conversations to groups of people, having a plan before you come into that conversation can really make it powerful. I like to make notes for myself because I'm easily distracted and I'm going to see 37 shiny balls and 15 squirrels and we're going to be off on 80 million tangents. And so even for me as an extrovert, because of the way that I communicate and the way that my brain works, I'll sit down and say, okay, what are we talking about today? These are the three things that I want to make sure we have time to touch on. And what are I always say, use the five W's and the H, right? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. That keeps my brain organized. It makes sure I get all the deliverable information across. And I'm not just talking to talk, but I'm talking to convey the right information.
Mm, good stuff. Oh my goodness. So, for the people who are curious to learn more about you outside the podcast, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, I would love to connect with folks if you find our conversation impelling or empowering today. Compelling, I think is what I was trying to say. But you can connect with me at ashleycoxx.co everywhere you go. That's our
Oh,
website, Facebook, Instagram. I am Ashley N. Cox on LinkedIn, but that's the only one that's different.
yeah. That's easy. So
Yeah.
for you who is watching or listening, look in the description for this episode and connect with Ashley. I mean, this is like barely scratching the surface, but I thought this would be a great entry point, especially for people who really aren't using their voice as their superpower, because I think it's important for us to use our voice despite what we've been told, as
Mhm.
children, you talk too much or you're too much. It's
Mhm.
like those are the things that make you uniquely different. There's no one
Yeah.
in this world like you. So for the person, Ashley, for the person who is loving everything that you're putting out here, they're picking up what you're putting down.
Mhm.
What would you say to them to help them unleash their ambition, really go forward with, using their voice as a superpower so they can, you know, not only help people in whatever environment they're in, but also just be empowered in themselves? Like, what would you want to say to them?
I love this question. All right. So, what I would say is that when we use our voice, we empower others around us to use their voice. And so, it's an impact ripple that is powerful. And that means whether you're advocating for yourself and your team sees that, whether you're advocating for someone on your team and they feel empowered to now use their voice, or whether it's for somebody in your community that you're using your voice for, they can now say, wow, it's safe for me to use my voice too. And the more that we all use our voices, the stronger we become together.